It was one of those blazing summer afternoons in downtown Atlanta. The air vibrated with heat, and the streets hummed with a rush of impatient traffic. Among the chaos, 22-year-old Imani Carter, a part-time college student and full-time food delivery driver, weaved her bicycle through congested lanes with practiced grace. Her worn red thermal bag bounced lightly against her back as she pedaled toward her next drop-off. Imani had earned a quiet reputation in the area, not just for her speed, but for her kindness. Everyone from corner shop clerks to homeless veterans knew her by name. She'd offer a free sandwich here, a word of encouragement there. But today wasn't going to be like any other day. As she stopped at a red light on Peachtree Avenue, a deep rumble approached from behind. A massive Harley-Davidson motorcycle roared next to her, revving unnecessarily loud. Its rider, a bulky, tattooed man in dark aviators and a sleeveless leather vest, glanced at her with a smirk. He had the look of a man who had mistaken arrogance for confidence his whole life. She ignored him, focusing on the GPS route on her cracked phone screen. But then, it happened. "Hey!" he barked, leaning slightly toward her. "You don't belong in the streets with real vehicles. Why don't you ride that Barbie bike on the sidewalk, sweetheart?" Imani didn't even flinch. She just stared forward. Maybe it was a silence that provoked him. Maybe it was the heat. Or maybe it was just the kind of man he was. But with one sudden motion, he slapped the food bag off her back, and his open hand grazed the side of her cheek. The world stopped. The drivers in nearby cars froze, hands on their wheels, unsure whether to honk or intervene. The slap wasn't loud, but the disrespect echoed like a bomb in the air. Imani slowly got off her bike. Her eyes weren't full of tears. They were full of calculation. "You shouldn't have done that," she said, her voice flat. The biker laughed. "What? Gonna call your boyfriend?" Imani calmly unbuckled her delivery bag, placing it on the sidewalk. Her long braid hung low over her shoulder, and she stretched her neck once, left, right. She moved like someone who knew how to fight, not because she liked violence, but because she'd had to survive it before. The biker scoffed again. "You really think you can?" He didn't get to finish. With stunning speed, Imani kicked the kickstand out from under his bike, and the massive Harley tilted awkwardly. As he grabbed to steady it, she jabbed his side with precise elbow, knocking the wind from him. The crowd of onlookers started pulling out phones. He tried to grab her wrist. Big mistake. She ducked, twisted his arm, and with a judo-style pivot, used his weight against him. In one fluid motion, the biker was slammed to the ground, half-pinned beneath his own motorcycle. The sound of metal scraping asphalt rang out as he groaned in pain, unable to lift the bike that now pinned his leg. He reached toward her again. Imani simply stepped back and said, loud enough for every phone camera nearby, "You messed with the wrong girl on the wrong day." Police sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had already called them. As they arrived and pieced the story together through witness accounts and videos, the officers didn't even bother to cuff her. Instead, they arrested the biker for assault. Imani stood silently as her fellow delivery drivers and strangers came to her side. One picked up a bag. Another offered to deliver her order for her. The crowd that had once watched in silence now clapped for her. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply looked down at the man still groaning beneath the weight of the very machine he once thought made him untouchable and said, "Respect is free, but disrespect will always cost you." And with that, she hopped back on her bike, slipped a bag over one shoulder, and rode off into the sweltering streets, unshaken, undefeated, and unforgettable. That night, Imani sat on the edge of her twin mattress in her small one-room apartment. Her knuckles were bruised, but not from violence, from gripping the handlebars too tight during the long, quiet ride home. The incident had already gone viral. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Text messages, Instagram DMs, TikTok tags. Someone had edited the video with dramatic music and the caption, "Don't mess with Imani." She should have felt empowered, even vindicated, but instead, she felt exposed. The moment, which had been real and raw for her, had become spectacle for everyone else. Imani didn't want to be famous. She wanted to be left alone. There was a knock at the door. She hesitated. It was nearly 11 p.m. She looked through the peephole. It was Marcus, one of the few friends she trusted in the city. He worked security downtown and had always looked out for her without ever expecting anything in return. "You okay?" he asked gently, stepping inside. She shrugged. "I didn't ask for all this." Marcus nodded. "No, but you handled it. You did what most people wouldn't." Imani sat back down, her voice low. "I didn't want to hurt him. I just snapped. He humiliated me." Marcus leaned against the wall. "People like him, they walk through life thinking no one's ever going to check them. You did. That matters." Imani said nothing. Then Marcus pulled out his phone. "Look at this." He showed her an email forwarded from a local news station. They wanted her on air for a live interview the next morning. Then another from a women's self-defense academy offering her a paid partnership. And another from a civil rights attorney offering legal backup if she needed it. Imani blinked. It was overwhelming. "I don't want to become a hashtag," she whispered. Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then don't. Be the full story. Not the headline. Tell it your way." She stayed up until dawn, writing. Not a statement. Not a rant. But her story. From childhood in East Baltimore, surviving a system that always expected her to shrink herself, to moving to Atlanta to pay her way through school. The insults, the silence, the small, quiet fight she'd won just by continuing to wake up and try. The next morning, she read it aloud on air. The world listened. 3 days later, the biker, real name Chuck Delaney, a known enforcer in a local outlaw MC, was still recovering in a hospital bed with a fractured ankle and public embarrassment he couldn't outrun. The video haunted him. And worse, the club kicked him out. "Bad optics," they said. Meanwhile, Imani received hundreds of messages from women, black, brown, immigrant, poor, saying she gave them a voice. She started teaching free weekend classes in a local park, bikes and boundaries, urban defense for women. The mayor's office called next, then a non-profit. She didn't chase a movement, but one found her anyway. Still, behind all the noise, she was still just Imani, the girl who rode too fast, cared too much, and still had 3 more classes left before she could graduate. She kept delivering food during the day and teaching at dusk. Her strength wasn't just in her body, it was in her presence. And one evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the buildings gold, she passed that same intersection on Peachtree Avenue. Same light, same rumble of engines. But this time, as a group of bikers passed her, they nodded in respect. She nodded back, because now they knew her name. And they knew, you don't put your hands on Imani Carter, not without consequences. Imani Carter had become a symbol, not because she asked to be, but because the truth travels faster than fear when it's finally given a voice. Her life, however, was still grounded in hard realities. She still woke up at 6 a.m., laced up her sneakers, tied her hair back, and zipped up that same red thermal bag that had carried more meals than most could imagine. Her knees still ached from miles of pedaling. Her stomach still clenched every time a stranger got too close. She was trending online, but still dodging potholes in real life. That morning, while leaving the community center after hosting her 3rd Bikes and Boundaries self-defense session, she received an anonymous envelope slipped under the door. Thick manila, no address, no name. Inside was a single photograph. It showed her standing near the fallen biker, Chuck Delaney, only the image had been crudely altered. A large X had been drawn over her body in red ink, and below, printed in shaky capital letters, "You're making enemies." Imani sat down, slowly, not out of fear, but from sheer emotional exhaustion. Marcus arrived minutes later after her shaken call. When she showed him the photo, he didn't say anything at first. He just stayed. "This isn't just about chucking them all," he finally muttered. "Someone's trying to make you back down." Imani leaned forward. "Then they still don't know who I am." That night, at a small, local podcast studio in West End, Imani sat down for an interview with Nia James, a black journalist who had made a name covering underrepresented voices in the South. The room was quiet. No viral edits. No viral filters. Just 2 women. 2 mics. 1 truth. "Do you feel safe now?" Nia asked. Imani looked into the distance for a moment before answering. "I feel seen." and being seen is dangerous, but it's also necessary. The host nodded slowly. You become a kind of hero to some people. Do you believe you're a hero? Imani shook her head. I'm just someone who finally stopped swallowing silence. That's not heroism. That's survival. The podcast hit over 4 million streams in the next 5 days. Meanwhile, Chuck Delaney was released from the hospital with more than just a bruised ego. Word had gotten around. His club had abandoned him. The streets mocked him. The internet erased him with memes. And so, in a poly-lit dive bar on the edge of Cobb County, he poured whiskey into his third glass and made a call. Yeah, he muttered. I want her quiet. Don't care how. The voice on the other end paused. Careful, Chuck. She's not alone anymore. Then take care of them, too. Back in the city, Imani didn't slow down. If anything, she moved faster. She started hosting free ride-alongs for young girls in the neighborhood, taught them not just how to ride safely, but how to hold their ground. She connected with nonprofits that donated safety gear, reflectors, even helmets painted with quotes like, "Ride loud," "Unmute yourself," "Fear stops at the curb." Still, she felt the growing weight of eyes on her. The unmarked vans parked too long outside the center. The shadowy figures that lingered a moment too long near her bike lock. She knew it was coming. Not if, but when. 1 week later, it happened just after dusk. Imani was heading home when a black SUV screeched in front of her, blocking the alley she often used as a shortcut. 2 masked men jumped out. Not gangbangers. Professionals. One grabbed her by the arm. She didn't scream. She didn't flinch. She moved. Years of instinct, pain, and survival hardened into action. She dropped to the ground, twisted her body, and slammed her elbow into the man's knee. He howled. The other pulled something shiny, maybe a knife, maybe worse. But before he got close, a whistle rang through the alley. Then footsteps. Dozens of them. From the rooftops, from fire escapes, from behind dumpsters, other riders, other girls, other fighters. Women Imani had trained, empowered, or inspired. They flooded the alley with flashlights, pepper spray, and loud voices. The masked men didn't even try to fight. They ran. The black SUV peeled off into the night. And Imani, heart pounding, stood tall, not alone, not afraid, not ever again. Imani Carter had become something else entirely. Not a name, not a face, not even a movement. She had become a warning to the wrong people, and a signal to the right ones. But with every headline, every reposted clip, every whispered story passed between city streets and subway cars, the pressure grew. Her life wasn't hers anymore. Not fully. She could no longer walk into a diner without someone recording her. Couldn't unlock her phone without seeing her own face splashed across news thumbnails or turned into motivational graphics. This is what resistance looks like. Imani didn't want to be a symbol. She wanted to breathe. But life had other plans. A storm in the system. One late afternoon, she was called into a meeting at the city's Department of Transportation. They wanted to partner with her. Not for justice, not for progress, but for PR. We think you could be the face of our urban cyclist awareness campaign, said the suited man, smiling like he'd practiced it in the mirror. Imani narrowed her eyes. Will you be changing laws to protect delivery riders, offering health coverage or hazard pay? The man blinked. Well, no, but you'd get a stipend and exposure. She stood up. I already have exposure. What I need is protection for my people. She walked out without shaking his hand. Back at the community center, Marcus was waiting for her, flipping through a folder filled with security footage and printed stills. I think they are tracking your route again, he said, pointing to a grainy image. A motorcycle. Not Chuck's, but similar. Same gang symbols. They know better, Imani muttered. But they are testing me. Marcus looked up, his voice firm. It's not just Chuck anymore. Word is, a bigger group is watching you now. You embarrass a power structure, and they want it back. She sat down slowly. Then we don't give it back. Marcus leaned in. I've got people. You've got people. Maybe it's time we make this official. She raised an eyebrow. You're talking about a network. I'm talking about a force. Birth of the Riders Coalition. That week, Imani called a secret meeting. Not in an office. Not over Zoom. They met under the Beltline Bridge at midnight. Delivery bikers, night shift riders, women who'd fought off attackers, and even ex-gang members tired of watching their communities rot. They wore helmets, gloves, boots. They brought maps, radios, ideas, and most of all, anger. Imani stood before them like a conductor before an orchestra. We're tired of waiting for someone else to protect us, she began. We deliver this city. We feed it, clean it, move it, and they treat us like roadkill. No more. The crowd murmured in agreement. So tonight, she said, we stop being targets. We become guardians. Welcome to the Riders Coalition. From that night on, every alley had eyes. Every route had a backup. Every biker trained in de-escalation, defense, and documentation. They shared burner phones, passwords, check-in points. The city had never seen anything like it. They weren't a gang. They weren't vigilantes. They were a network of protection built by the same people who'd once been invisible. But power attracts enemies. Chuck, still limping from his injury, was now a ghost of his former self, but his humiliation had been adopted as a cause by a rising extremist biker crew called the Iron Teeth. They didn't just hate Imani. They hated what she stood for. Women, black women, working class resistance, public exposure of private abuse. They wanted revenge, and they had contacts in law enforcement, in city councils, in places where shadows stretched far beyond streets and alleys. The setup. On a cloudy Tuesday morning, Imani received a call from a woman crying hysterically. I'm being followed, she sobbed. I was in your class last week. They're after me. I'm at the abandoned textile warehouse on 14th. Imani didn't hesitate. She geared up, called Marcus to watch the center, and wrote out what she didn't know. The call was fake. The voice was AI generated. And waiting at that warehouse was an ambush. Inside the trap, Imani entered through the rusted gate, flashlight in hand, breath steady. Hello? No answer. Then, boots on metal. She spun. Too late. A heavy object smashed across her back. She fell hard. 3 men closed in, armed, laughing. One wore an iron teeth patch. This is what happens when you play super hero, one sneered. But before they could touch her, her radio crackled. Strike Team Alpha, eyes on target. 10 seconds. They didn't know Imani never rode alone anymore. From the rooftop came the flutter of drones. From the rear, 24 riders flooded in, dressed in black and red, silent and swift. In less than a minute, the attackers were on the ground, disarmed, exposed, filmed, and when the police arrived, already tipped off with location, footage, and statements, they had no choice but to arrest the Iron Teeth crew. Imani sat up slowly, bruised but unbroken. I told you, she said, looking down at one of the groaning men. Respect is free, but disrespect will always cost you everything. Atlanta pulsed with the heat of late summer, steam rising from sidewalks and tempers simmering in traffic. Amidst the chaos, 22-year-old Imani Carter, an underpaid food delivery rider with a burning purpose, zipped through the streets on her scuffed-up bicycle. She wasn't just delivering meals. She was delivering survival. The city never gave her space. Drivers honked. Strangers gawked. And that day on Peachtree Avenue, it all escalated into something that would shift her life forever. A massive motorcycle pulled up beside her at a red light. The rider, a thick-chested man in leather, tattoos crawling down his arms, his sunglasses hiding dead eyes, leaned toward her and spat. Sidewalks that way, sweetheart. Imani didn't flinch, didn't respond. She had dealt with this kind of man before. That's when he hit her, not just her dignity, but physically. His open hand struck the delivery bag off her back, grazing her cheek with enough force to make onlookers gasp. Something cracked inside her. Not fear, not rage, a refusal. She calmly stepped off her bike. Before he could react, she kicked the Harley's kickstand, unbalancing the massive machine. As he scrambled, she used his weight against him, flipping him from the seat and slamming him into the pavement. The heavy bike fell on top of him. Trapped, humiliated, groaning in shock, phones came out. Sirens wailed minutes later. Imani didn't run. She simply looked down at the man and said, "You picked the wrong one." The video went viral. Her name exploded across headlines. But fame wasn't peace, it was pressure. Weeks later, Imani became a symbol, not by choice, but by force. Women messaged her. Men threatened her. Offers came in from media outlets and brands, all wanting to cash in on her moment. But something else was happening too. A shadow was growing. The biker, Chuck Delaney, was a member of a notorious crew called the Iron Teeth, a gang that didn't forget humiliation. He wanted revenge, and his ego attracted others. Bigger ones, richer, more dangerous. Imani began receiving threats, anonymous calls, photos of herself taken from across the street. Someone had tapped into her delivery routes. But she didn't break. She built. She gathered other riders, delivery women, ex-military bikers, single moms, corner store guards, people the world ignored. Together, they formed the Riders Coalition, a grassroots, block-by-block defense force that protected their own. Imani trained them in self-defense, de-escalation, and street tactics. They watched each other's backs. Their motto? No one rides alone. The ambush. One night, Imani received a call from a panicked woman claiming to be in danger, a trap lured to an abandoned warehouse. 3 Iron Teeth goons waited for her, armed and ready. They thought she'd come alone. But when they struck, so did her people. From rooftops, alleys, even underground cells, her team swarmed. In 45 seconds, the attackers were disarmed, subdued, and filmed. The footage was released online within the hour. It wasn't just about a fight anymore. It was about a shift in power. 1 month later, the Riders Coalition had grown into a citywide network. Assaults on female couriers? Down 60%. Nighttime riders? Escorted in pairs. Biker gangs? Forced underground. Local politicians took notice. Laws were proposed to protect gig workers. A bill passed offering hazard pay for night delivery shifts. Imani declined all interviews, all brand deals. She wasn't chasing influence. She was shaping it. When a journalist finally caught up to her, they asked, "What made you fight back that day?" She replied, "I didn't fight for revenge. I fought so the next girl doesn't have to." Final scene. 1 year later, a new delivery girl rolled down the same stretch of Peachtree Avenue. Young, nervous, her thermal bag nearly slipping off. A group of bikers roared by. But this time, one of them nodded to her. Another offered a slow salute, and a sticker on a nearby light pole read, "Imani rode here." The girl smiled. She wasn't scared. She knew she was protected. Because Imani Carter didn't just deliver food. She delivered a city from fear. The end.